Gonna call the curriculum committee meeting to order. It's a couple minutes after 8:02. And we'll just go around and take roll call. I'm Erin Dove, school board member.
Connie Schmidt, school board member.
Kevin Hyde, curriculum coordinator.
Jennifer Boyer, assistant in curriculum.
Erin Faust, West Bend Virtual Academy K-5 coordinator.
Tim Harder will be joining us shortly, Director of Technology, and Laura Jackson, Assistant Superintendent.
Jen Wimmer, superintendent.
And then Nancy is,
Nancy Jessman is joining us virtually today.
Good morning.
okay.
Good morning, Nancy. Today we are, I'm sorry, Erin, go ahead.
No, but I was gonna just hand it over to you.
Today on our agenda, I'm posting it as well. We have the social studies resources. I wanted to come back around these. We talked about them in July, we talked about them in August, and then we kind of tabled moving forward with sixth grade. And we're at a point now where we need to be ready for next school year, so we need to move forward with sixth grade and get the teachers looking more into their resources as they prepare for next year. And so we're going to revisit that a little bit. Then we're going to just talk about our services for our English language learners. One of the, just to keep the curriculum committee board informed about the services we provide, we revised that policy not too long ago. And this past year, our EL team has been working on our EL guidebook. So we just wanted to update you on that process and where we're at with our services. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some curriculum review, program reviews that we have coming up that'll be occurring over the next 18 months. And so we just wanted to update the curriculum committee on that. EL standards, as you recall, the state adopted new standards last year. They finalized those in May. So when the board approved the notice of standards for the parents, they approved both standards occurring in the notice, knowing that our teachers would be working with these during the course of the year, and we'll bring them for adoption at a later date. And that's what we had talked about in July. So we're going to just talk about some of the differences in the standards before they are we move them forward for consideration by the whole board. And then the academic progress update. I wanted to take a little time to talk about the new, what the state is visualizing for the new report cards. We have some side-by-side comparisons, so you can take a look at that visually. I did put a, in the handouts I just gave you, and I'll collect it at the end. It's not for public release, but you can look at it, and it's a generic, a mid-sized district report card. There's no district actually attached to the one that's in your packet. And then we're going to talk about summer school programming recommendations. And the summer school program will come before the full board for approval shortly. All right. So sixth grade social studies resources is the first thing on the agenda. And if you recall, we had talked in July when we talked a little bit about the differences between the standard textbook that we may all have known growing up and the resource that we came to decide on. We talked about the team that had been in place last year in social studies at that level had the opportunity to look through all of the texts. We talked about the feedback not necessarily matching up with the text. And one of the specific things I had pointed out was a statement like there's no teacher's edition. There is a teacher's edition. And ultimately we selected a text that is not what we had in school. It's not a thick, heavy, large 2,000-page text that covers everything, but rather we selected by units that match the units of instruction that we would be utilizing. The other part of that is the series that we selected is National Geographic, and it has the images, the data, all of that is visualized in common modern formats, and it is presented at different levels so that a student can read it within their Lexile range and access that material while the same content is covered. Visually, they look the same, and the content is presented just in a slightly different manner with slightly different vocabulary, and so that it addresses the different Lexile levels, which are reading levels. Kevin, what did you want to add at this time?
It does a really nice job fitting into inquiry. It does a really nice job hitting the new geography standards. And so I think it'll also be something very consistent with what fifth grade's using right now. So fifth grade has another series from National Geographic, so it'll be something that they're very used to. So that'll be nice as well.
The tie-in with the 7th and 8th grade approach to social studies instruction, it will tie in very well and be more of a seamless flow for the students. Mr. Rell and Mr. Hyde will be working with the 6th grade teachers throughout the rest of this year in small increments of time with the series, once we take it for approval. Do you have questions about it?
I know social studies curriculum tends to be, can be a hot topic in our community.
Yes.
I appreciate the teacher input. Was there an opportunity for public to review?
We did not have a public review of the social studies text.
Okay. Is that somewhere along in the process?
We did not have it planned in for this.
Okay. Okay. I mean, hopefully it'll be fine, but I just know that.
I think what you could easily do is make sure the public's aware as they are, able to, and just have them available up in the front, and people who would like to come in and look at them.
Yeah.
And just have it open, because we're, weeks away from it coming forward,
Yeah.
being approved, and that way the general public has an opportunity to review it, and we can share the links. They can certainly look at some pieces online that are available.
And to be honest,
Sometimes it helps to be able to look at and touch and see what it is.
it's one of those things that people will complain about, but they would never take any action on it anyway, as far as like.
Availability.
Yeah, so, just saying that, hey, we're an open book.
Yeah.
Just in the effort to be transparent and give people the opportunity. I don't want to disrupt your process, but I think it will go a long way to just, hey, we're making this available.
So I think two pieces. One, because it's not a large scale adoption of any kind. It's just a 6th grade. So the principal having some targeted communication and having a set there, certainly for people to look at as they come and go. But here, where it's not a disruption to school, having it out, having some links, and it being available for people to look at if they so choose.
I think that's a great idea.
We'll work with Lance on that, getting that set up with Lance and our front desk team.
Okay.
And previously, we had set up some times with the public library to be able to, in the future, host materials there, so public could review. Well, we did that pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
The pandemic kind of threw a wrench in that.
All right, our next topic is our EL services, and we have a couple of things in the materials I handed out to you. You have the policy 342.7, which is our services for English language learners, And this was revised in 2019. There are 7 bullets there that talk about the procedures that the board identified for our English language learners. And so I wanted to go over the implementation of that a little bit. Following the approval of this policy in the fall of 2019, our EL teachers utilized EduClimber for the first time for the student's ILP, or Individualized Learning Plan. And you have a printout of a blank one of those. It's in board docs. It's, doesn't have any student information, but it gives you the information that is included in the ILP for students. These are accessible by anybody who teaches that child. So if you access the child in EduClimber, you can access their ILP. That, at the elementary level, when they generally have their classroom teacher and then their specialists, it's a smaller number of people who access that document. At the high school, it could be all of their core teachers plus others who work with the students in different groupings. And it's clustered in different areas that follow both the handbook with the state recommendations and the board policy. When a student has an English proficiency level of 4 or over, we do start a transition plan. So that means we're wrapping up their services, making sure that they are moving towards that being fully English proficient and able to only be on a monitoring plan by the EL teacher. Those services vary depending on the child's needs. So below a 4, a student has more direct contact with an English language specialist, an EL teacher. The plan of service on the ILP describes 5 different ways that we have the program implemented, and that will be based on what this level of student need is and what their English proficiency is. Then we talk about what kind of support are they getting from the EL teacher. Is it going to be pull-out? Is it going to be very inclusionary support within their classroom? Is there going to be some self-contained work? Typically, an EL student is only self-contained when they first arrive to the country and need a very comprehensive transition support. Then a student has goals identified in a few areas, and based on how they, where their needs lie, the EL teacher will work with their classroom teachers and on those specific goals, and then also, again, with the student and communicating that to the parent. An EL student has classroom supports that are often small but significant, in that these small little things, small little supports provide access to the general curriculum that without these supports the student wouldn't have. And you can see on the ILP when a teacher's filling it out for the student, they'll identify the supports that a student should have in place in each classroom. Each year, our students who are in the English language program take the Wisconsin Access Assessment. This year, if you recall, the access was bumped to start at the end of February. Normally, it's wrapping up right about now. It usually wraps up by after the first week in February. It usually starts at the beginning of December. The state pushed it back, didn't eliminate it, so we are planning on starting that at the end of the month. With our virtual students, it is the first state assessment on the schedule, and our virtual students will be coming in for that. Our virtual English language learners will most likely be coming here, and we're attempting to do it by family, because the assessment can be taken across multiple levels in this room at the same time, with the exception of the speaking test. We can have a family in a room spread out taking the test. And so our EL teachers have created those schedules within their sites, and then we'll be reserving space here for students who need that. An EL student is eligible for accommodations as necessary. They should be matching the accommodations they have in the regular classroom. accommodations as necessary on our state assessments. And so that's also identified in the ILP. And then that goes up to the state for further information. The second plan you have there is the monitoring plan. So a student reaches level 4, we have looked over their data, we've looked at their successes, and we determined they're ready for a monitoring plan. And so the monitoring plan is shorter, is also an EduClimber, and the goals are not listed, but the continuation of supports each year and what those look like are in place. Supports typically when you're on a monitoring plan are really that checking in with the teachers, checking in with the student, monitoring their progress. And that allows you to see their successes and eventually exit them from the program. They'll be observed by the EL teacher in the monitoring process in order to demonstrate that they have maintained and are successful on their own. When a parent sees this, all of the student data is pulled right into the report. So the data from the access test, their test scores that for each area, and are all pulled right into the report. So this is a generic copy, so there's no information on it. But the access test results for the individual child are pulled in so that the teacher can see them, but also the parent. Do you have questions about the EL monitoring process? The ease of access to the ILP has been really helpful for our teachers. I've talked with multiple classroom teachers that just find it easier to access through this process, and they know right where to go and it's always there. And I think that has created a greater awareness. In EduClimber, when a teacher looks at their student data, they also see a tag that identifies that the student is EL, so that they know that report exists as well.
Are the EL students, are they logging in as often as you think they should? Like, and just with the language barrier, virtual school, does that create another, obviously it's another obstacle for everyone, but.
Yep. I would say, so if you looked at our general population in the virtual program, we have some students that have signed on but are not logging in, and they're lifelong West Bend residents without, who are lifelong English speakers. And so I haven't done a comparison, and I don't think that I would speak about that publicly because it is a small number of EL students in the program, so I think that it would publicly identify them.
Okay.
But I would say we are seeing consistent patterns across, regardless of the population.
Okay, as long as, is there, like if a teacher notices the student's not logging in, you said they're signing in and logging in, is there a difference?
In the virtual program?
Yeah.
I don't know why I said signing in.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I don't know, maybe I have to listen something. Is there a process for reaching out to them to make sure that everything, okay.
So there's also a couple of targeted things that we've done specifically with our Spanish-speaking community. So principals, myself, our counselor, one of our counselors who's bilingual, went and presented and have worked with families. So we have wonderful organizations. So we have done that preemptively and talked about the level of language, what translation is available to families. So we did some proactive work. And then I know, like you said, there's kind of that safety net under all of our kids at this age. But certainly teachers kind of sounding that alarm, and then the specialists who are in tune to their students who are on their caseload that they work with are monitoring as well.
Okay.
And then when we've had things like step out or things of that nature, when we were doing cohort, we still invited all of our kids in who needed to be there. So if they had some needs for support in that way, they were invited in. They might have been there on days opposite their cohort. So as you said, right now, I think everyone's just in tune to what safety net do we put under all of our students.
Right.
But we did some proactive, and there's certainly some responsive work here too.
Okay.
Our EL teachers have been in touch with their virtual students as well as their students in the buildings.
Okay.
And some of our virtual students at the high school that are also English language learners have come in to work in the, not just in the, with our success coach, Andrew, but also with Mr. Wondruck, our EL teacher at the high school level. We've done conferences, just like we do with in-person students, with the virtual students that have involved the success coach, the teacher, or teachers, and the English language teacher, EL teacher as well. So just like with in-person, and we are reaching out, and then there are, we've had we brought some back because the translations and the supports that were needed were not, were not as easily accessible as the parents thought, or were more heavier
Sure.
than what they expected,
Okay.
which is typical, which has also happened with other students.
Okay, great. Yeah, I heard a statistic in the past week about the number, I mean, it's nationwide, not specific to West Bend, but how many students since COVID started have never even logged on a single time, and it's just frightening. So I'm glad that we have the process in place for that.
Yeah, we're monitoring attendance and doing truancy reports if needed and things like that as well for students who aren't engaging. So with the regard to the EL program, any other questions? Nancy, any questions?
No, no question.
All right, so our program review process, in your packet, we have not in the packet that I presented, sorry, in the executive summary there, we just talked about our program review process and just a kind of a high-level overview of that. When we begin a program review, we always look at our student outcome data and what is that telling us. We look at what are the current standards and learning priorities identified by the district. Those generally coincide with our state standards. We look at, does our instruction allow students to meet and exceed those program standards and those learning priority areas. We'll take a look at our assessment practices, and earlier Kevin mentioned when we were talking about social studies, the inquiry approach. The new standards in social studies are very heavy in an inquiry approach because it's about how you go about learning about the world. So when we look at our instruction and assessment practices, we need to make sure that they're evolving and aligned with our standards. And that is part of a typical program review. We will seek feedback from students, parents, and families, from staff at different points in the program review. So data is one piece of feedback. Looking at your connection between your instruction, your assessment, and the standards, that's another piece of feedback. But then identifying what staff and students and families have found as strengths and deficits in the program is typically a survey piece of feedback that you have. If your program review leads you to say you need additional resources or you need different resources, they're not aligned, they're not having the academic outcomes we're seeking, or we've been utilizing them for a long time, they've worked, but now we know that there are other more recent research bases that are proving to be really effective. if there's a reason to be looking at other resources and we bring them in, as we talked earlier, we'll have a public review once they have been narrowed down. And within that public review of the narrowed down materials, we'll take the feedback. We won't put anything out for public review that we would not use. And it doesn't make sense if we've identified that something's not for use in West Bend, that we wouldn't actually put that out for public review. You've seen it before where we've come to the board with a summarization of findings or a reason why we are looking at new materials, or reason why we might not look at new materials. If you recall, with our literacy, our shift to a balanced literacy approach, we talked a lot about what our literacy scores were prior to that at board meetings. We then talked about what a balanced literacy approach is and how we weren't going to be doing a major adoption of one thing, but we were going to be focusing on training our staff and then implementing pieces of the balanced literacy approach. It's an approach to really good literacy instruction and not a specific program. And we were utilizing that as a strategy for improving our instruction across the board and coming together and having some consistent instruction. So as a result of a program review, you have different actions that happen, but you don't necessarily know what those actions are going to be until you get to that summarization of findings. That summarization will tell us, yeah, we need to look at new materials, yes, we need to continue with what we've been doing. Maybe we're retraining staff on what we have, because sometimes what you have in place is really good, but you've kind of drifted away from the original intent or from all of the program components, and you've left some program components that really are would support further growth. And so that retraining and regrounding, recalibrating with staff really invigorates a program that's already in existence and helps you gain even further results from it. So we have all of those pieces as part of a program review. Before I go on and talk a little bit more, what questions do you have about that? I didn't mention.
Glasses and masks just don't. Very well.
So we will be really looking at our math program. We've had Bridges for 6 years. It's time for us to really audit our progress. Our implementation of CPM was gradual. So we did it in 6th grade and 8th grade, then later came back and did it in 7th grade. But it's been, so from 7th grade, it's been at least 4 years for 7th grade, which was our last CPM program. That one and Algebra 2 were our last implementations of CPM. So we're going to do a full program audit in math, and that will be starting first with a small group, and then it will expand. So this year, some systems professionals, some program, some math leads at the high school level and Badger level will come together and talk about the process, lay some things out. They'll gather some of that data in advance, and then we'll have a broader group begin the process in the fall. But this small core group will start the initial groundwork for that. Any questions about the math?
I'm glad we're reviewing the math. I know there were a lot of changes in math 10 years ago, and I feel like we've kind of come back to a more palatable method, and so.
Some of our students had a lot, through their elementary years, experienced a lot of different math programs as we were piloting. And so that's not a process that we want to repeat this time around. We're going to do as we described and really look at that. Health is also underway. We have, originally we were going to start meeting in August, and we've delayed that. Health will have, we can do some initial standards work on our own, but then when we start really digging in, we will bring in healthcare professionals as well as family and community to be part of the process. And we just really, I thought a lot about, there's ways we can do this in these times where we can have the community in virtually, or we could have them really spread out in the space. This is such an important topic to members of our community. I really felt like I needed to do it in a manner that really was open to the public. And so I hesitated in moving forward with this. We will, again, we have one program that's some of our community has really urged us to look at. The committee as a whole will look at programs and then as well, and come up with recommendations to support once we've identified the learning priorities for health. This will include all the way down to pre-K, so it'll be a pre-K 12th grade program. And as we are doing a full program review, it's not just about the curriculum and the goals, it's not just about human growth and development. It's about where are we going to be teaching all these aspects of health from our littlest students on. And we currently, students are required to have a half credit of health earned between 7th grade and 12th grade, according to our statutes. Many of our students take it early on in their 8th grade year, and our high school staff and, from a variety of programs have reported just how much of a need they see for it at the high school level when they're a little older and planning more for their adulthood, for their physical health and their mental health. And I expect that that will be a pretty fruitful discussion at the meetings. World language. We have our world language program has been in place. We just got ready for our 6th year of students, our students who will be eligible to take 6 years. We have been monitoring our student participation in the world languages, and we've been looking closely at what's offered. So one of the recent fixes we did was the initial implementation had students taking the first year, the equivalent of high school year 1, in 5th and 6th grade. And it was the equivalent of a semester over the course of a year. Given but the amount of time, the length of time they were spending was hours less than a student taking it at the high school would have. And so we did some refinement to that schedule so that students still could get through 1 and 2 before they got to high school, if they chose to stay in the world language. So they'd still enter high school at the same point if they chose to stay in through all the way through Badger. But it provided more instructional time that is more aligned with what they would have in the high school. And so we made that little fix along the way. And really because of what the feedback they were seeing from the student experience. And so that was a tweak we made. We also added the 6 on so that it's ready for the students who are needing a year 6 world language. Now it's time to do the full program. And so we'll be looking more closely at the whole program is starting high school world language in 5th grade, working for our students. So, and are we having those outcomes? Are we having those, are they leaving us with, they could be fully fluent. So we'll do a full program review coming
purpose is to determine if if it's effective, or whether or not to continue having something in fifth grade.
And, yes, those two things.
Okay.
And
Okay,
is what is in fifth and sixth grade, what we want to continue with.
okay.
So all of that. So it's really open,
Mhm.
but it's all of
Okay,
And I think too, as part of that exploration, is thinking how much language instruction has changed, and the opportunity for our students to take a lot more and diverse languages that
Mhm.
we don't offer here. So I think the structure of world language programs was always like, yep, and I get these 2 choices, or I get these 3 choices. And now that that's open, are there other experiences for exposure we need to look at, so kids have, you know, a wider array? How do we look at core pieces of language development? But I think all of it has to be examined.
yeah, I mean, I'm curious to know, what, you know, with the pandemic, I know students have, you know, had the opportunity to try other languages, and that's a really positive thing. I'm kind of curious as to what those are, and I'm strongly in favor of continuing world language at fifth grade at the latest. You know, if anything, starting even younger would be nice, but, yeah,
And
if
like you
there's
said, are the early years exploratory?
right.
So then they can look at and then make a selection and really stick with, because to have students who graduate, to have that range of years of opportunity for language acquisition, and have a student graduate from us truly biliterate, earning college credits, or be able to be biliterate within the workforce in a language, is nothing but an asset. You know, it's almost conversely the same as our EL program, where, you know, their second language is English acquisition, but still maintaining biliteracy for our students. So again, that's just a strength and an asset for everyone.
Yeah, there's certainly no downside to being exposed to other languages.
The tweak to the fifth, sixth grade program, is this the first year that's fully
Yeah.
happening?
Mhm.
Okay.
And it,
So we won't
so
know for a
fifth, sixth,
couple years
seven
till they get to
are-
high school to
yeah,
see if they're at.
Fifth, sixth, seven were tweaked for this year,
Okay.
eighth grade next year.
And then it's our juniors that will have the opportunity to have 6 years.
Yeah, this year's juniors, yeah.
Okay. Curious to see what the enrollment is, how many people made it all the way. Okay.
Our EL standards are, as I spoke when I was kind of highlighting the agenda. The state identified new standards for English language, or for English language arts, excuse me. And again, these are not Common Core standards, but developed within the state. The state of Wisconsin had last year had public forums, and they were held around the state where you could come and give feedback on the drafts of the standards. They're doing that right now in mathematics, but they're hosting those forums in a virtual setting. Otherwise, just allowing people to provide feedback through a survey. And, but the town halls they had were part of the development process of the new English standards. Then they, from those town hall meetings, they did revise the drafts further and then released them first in May of this past school year. So in the executive summary, that what's highlighted are some of the shifts within the standards that have occurred. The previous state standards were Wisconsin standards that had been based on the Common Core, but not Common Core exact. And these ones, there's some good shifts in these. The reading foundational standards continue to serve as the building blocks, but they're now brought up front in the beginning of the document. So it's just really that's a document change, but but as they're they're just, because they are foundational, they're more at the forefront. And again, they go through the early years in school, again, building those building blocks for being able to read and utilizing your phonics, utilizing your clues to help you comprehend. Previously, the standards had a reading informational text separate from a reading fictional text. And in the new model of the standards, these two come together. The students are asked to apply things into both contexts, but that is now just a reading standards section that includes both the fiction and nonfiction comprehension and strategies for reading. The largest shift, or one of the largest shifts in the standards, is in the area of writing. And I really think this is really important for us. We know this is an area where we have many opportunities for our students to excel and great opportunities to really improve our outcomes in the area of writing. And I think that the new standards really highlight that. It shows there's writing for different purposes. We are more casual, creative. There's more instances where you do more formalized writing. And it also highlights that the importance of reflective writing for students. Speaking and listening are areas that within our standards they're part of the initial standards. They now ask that students are understanding speech differently in different contexts for different situations, and how you might speak differently again based on the situation you're in. What does the context call for? And I think that highlights some really important instructional goals. Do you have any questions about the English language arts standards? We would bring these to the full board for consideration and information, and then for formal adoption yet this spring, so that they'll be in place for next year. Our teachers have been working with them as they're working on their language workshop units. They've been working on utilizing them during the year, so they have become familiar with them, and they have had some really good feedback on the new standards.
Prior to 2000, or the most recent, I mean, I know it's,
Yeah.
when's the last time this happened? You know how long it's been?
Yep, 2007.
Oh, okay, so it's been a while. Okay, good. And it comes just from the state of Wisconsin, that's not like a federal
Correct.
thing? Okay.
I appreciate the summary, because that slide thing was 96 pages long. I got lost in it.
We'll appreciate your ELE teachers. I know, all 96 pages.
Yes, exactly.
I feel like all of these shifts are leading to lifelong skills. Like the speaking thing. Yeah, you're not gonna talk to your buddy the way you're gonna talk to your boss. I think that's, I don't know, I just feel like
Oh,
it's super
absolutely.
important.
Well, and the other piece too that you've noticed as you've worked with standards and instruction over the last couple of years, the intentional shift from memorizing and regurgitating information to hit something to higher level thinking, synthesis, and application across multiple contexts. So when, Kevin was talking inquiry-based in social studies, it's around learning how to learn and apply out of, not just when I was in social studies class and knew these things, but that's the shift you're seeing and feeling, and it's intentional and helping our kids.
Oh, and also technology's changed since 2007 and how we consume literature and.
Absolutely.
It's just changed, I think it's changed. Yeah.
Change from last week some days.
Yeah, and it's gotta have an impact on kids' brains and how they learn and how they retain, and
okay to be
down.
passionate about different things.
It's right, and she is, yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I'm just saying that it just doesn't look like it used to,
Oh, yeah.
No.
so.
Well, in the reading, when you're talking about, you read nonfiction this way and fiction this way.
Mm.
No, sometimes you just have to read it and figure out if it is fiction or not.
Yep.
I mean, if you're reading the news or any, I mean, I feel like that's important. We're not gonna just place it in these buckets. You have to decipher that for yourself.
Hey, you want kids to question things, right?
Yeah.
Be curious and to question and to maintain that throughout their lives, so.
Okay.
High Spiegola did the summary that,
Thank you, Maggie. Yeah, wherever you are.
One of the things that, you know, we talked about the inquiry and the social studies, and we just reviewed this. I think it's like grounding to really think about our youngest students, when they graduate school and then go on to learn what their career is. And whether they're going on for further education at a tech school, at a university, or they're going into an internship in a field right away, whatever it is, you're gonna be really an active part, not just a novice, but an active part of the workforce in 2040. And that, thank you, that's like, that makes you pause. Like, we're looking at these kids and teaching them, they're gonna enter that in 2040, like, whoa. So, as you were talking about, building those skills, that ability to, not just to read the words, but to be able to analyze the context and analyze what's necessary is super important.
Not a school skill, it's a life skill.
Yeah, exactly.
These are good changes.
So we have talked about how the Department of Public Instruction is not releasing report cards this year. And I wanted to take a little bit of time to go through the preview of the report card. So you have a document in front of you that says, example, mid-sized district. It's very generic, and it is what the state has put out as how they're thinking of visualizing the data going forward. So I'm just going to walk through some side-by-side comparisons of that. This is our state report card, the front screen that you're used to seeing. This is our report card from 2018 to 2019. I chose to use this one in order, because this is the data that new information is based on. During the 1920 school year, we did not do state testing. So the assessment scores that were utilized for this report card are the same ones that would be reflected in any draft that the state looks at. So in the old report card, we had our overall score right up front, and then the color code to go with that. Student achievement, we had priority areas were identified as student achievement, district growth, closing gaps, and on track and post-secondary readiness. The number scores were here, telling you that what the district score was and what the maximum score was. Down below here, we had some district information. This image is probably very familiar. On the new, what they're proposing on the new format would be this overall score would now have an image like this, where it's just a quick score summary, the number, and then your starred rating. This district information here, which includes the race and ethnicity, is visualized in a bar graph. This is this student information, again, just indicating what percentage each race makes of the student population.
And this is not ours, this is the sample. Or,
With this part here,
It's
from the
ours.
old report card, is ours.
thank you.
This is the sample. So the, again, visualizing it differently. Priority area weights had looked like this before. It had the label and then the percent of the weight. It's going to look like this in the future. Depending on the feedback they get.
So it looks like more visual to help people navigate. But again, I think the biggest thing, are they still talking about sliding scales for priority weighting?
Yes.
Okay, so I think the largest takeaway on a report card is that dependent upon your demographics and all of that, that's a sliding scale. Those priority weights are different for everyone. So that changes depending on those things. So that's an important piece of the report cards to understand, that I might not have the same priority weights as my neighbor next door. So that's just an important component, so that's gonna still persist in the new updates.
New will be an area called target groups, and we'll go into that in a little bit. Student achievement is going to be visualized like this.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Back to sliding scale. Will there be raw data available so we can, view
Yes,
the imperial evidence?
We
and
can
not
look
just
at, and know where their sliding scale is. We can find like districts for actual comparables.
okay.
We can do that. We have access to our raw data. We won't have access to other raw data, but we'll know where they landed and how to compare or how to caution
Okay.
like direct comparable.
Yeah, because I feel like that,
There's
it doesn't give an accurate enough picture for our needs.
right. No, it should always be treated as one piece. Do we want to see improvement here? Absolutely. Are we
Mhm.
going for improvement here? Absolutely. But it's also one piece of the story. They also use 3 years of rolling data. We now have this blip for everyone that they're really just trying to figure out and how to make it meaningful for people. So we're gonna continue, as Laura's brought forward, continue to look at, local measures, our understanding of our kids, other data to, as you said, make a more complete picture of our district.
It's really important that you have that balanced approach for
Mhm.
localized decisions and localized actions, because this is just a glimpse of the system.
Right.
If you look at page 4 in the example mid-sized district packet, so you will see the data charts. These are, in our current report cards, when you look at the detailed view rather than the summary, this information is in there, and which simply gives you the percent of students below basic, proficient, and advanced, and in different breakdowns. If their demographic group is too small, no data will be represented.
I mean, it's certainly important to look at everything, but I just don't want to get too caught up in comparing ourselves to some, we're just not, wouldn't be an apples to apples. I just want to stay focused on our own goals, and we know our district better than anybody else does, and you do want to compare yourself to others just to make sure that you're not living in a bubble, but at the same time, I don't want to get too caught up in this.
Will we always have 4 priority areas, or could it be like 2?
Well, they're going to identify 4 priority
Always
areas and then target group information. So going back to our original, the current report card, let me just remind you, student achievement data was presented this way. This is how it was. Now they're going to identify target groups, and you'll see that coming up in a moment. So student achievement data would be presented this way. It simply has the circle graph and the bar graph comparing the state and the district instead of just the numerical visualization of that.
I mean, to be honest, of these sample sizes are so insignificant compared to, you know, it's so out of balance, you know, you can't compare 933 students to 15, like that, they're both, you know,
Yeah, it's giving you that raw data, like, this is what
yeah.
it's based on. And then, again, when it is just, when the sample size is too small that you could identify students, that won't be shared. And again, the information you have in front of you is just an example.
Okay. I mean, there's no
Or
perfect
identify.
way to do this. I appreciate how hard it must be for the state to determine these things, but you know, some people they just live and die by these report cards, and just want to make sure that we're above all of it.
Page 5 has a different way of visualizing the student group data. And it has just that line down the middle that says, here's where, you know, is where the average is. And within each of those student groups on the sample, it shows you if you are above the line, below the line, or right on the line. District growth, was currently, again, just presented as the number out of 100. It's a value out of 100. Going forward, same thing exists, but the growth is presented in the same kind of bar graph. I'm gonna move down to target groups. So target group data is achievement growth, students regularly attending, and graduation rates. For a district, the state will identify whom your target group is. So maybe that's English language learners for a district. Maybe it is Asian students, maybe it's Black students, maybe it's students in poverty. But that will be different district to district, what your target group is. And then the state will be looking at the target group and then their growth over time. So once the target group is identified, your comparison in how that group is growing will be looked at year to year until a different target group is identified. It might be your special education population, but the state will determine who that is. And then they'll be looking at these 4 categories for that target group.
And again, that differs by district.
Differs by district, and it's the first time they'll be looking at that. So this year is sort of like a practice year because nothing's publicly released. And we have the sample to say this is, you know, but it'll vary by district.
Have they talked about how long that will remain your target group so that you can see it then?
Based on, so the ESSA information from the federal monitoring would have it be until you've shifted that achievement bar for that group. That's what the projection is right now, but
People know what the bar is? Do they, you have to, I mean,
I
what's the magic
anticipate
number?
that information coming.
Okay.
Under the ESSA, the way it was previously, I anticipate more information coming, but if your priority area was math and you were identified as one, it was a comparative thing. If your math achievement was here and there were this many districts below you, you may not have been identified. But if those districts below you raise their achievement above you, even if you stay the same, you might drop. Or if your achievement went up a little bit and those below you were working their tail off to get their achievement up, they could go past you. You might have gone up a little bit, but now they've surpassed you, so now you're in the bottom. That's the easiest way to explain it. Again, just the graphic visualization of the data instead of the numeric only. Any thoughts on, I understand your your question about, well, you're looking at these fast
No,
numbers.
it's just, it is what it is, you know,
But like you said, there's, nothing's gonna be perfect, so it's how do we unpack it, how do we localize it, how do we use it, and what, weight do we put on it for ourselves, and how do we make sure the public truly understands what it is and isn't saying?
Right.
And that we understand so that we're using that information in the best way to make decisions.
Right. Yeah, we're still gonna do what's in the best interest of our own
Mhm.
kids,
Yeah.
so that's what really matters.
And when there are we still have a provision in in the statutes that we post our state report cards. So we continue to have the 18-19 report card posted. That's our most recent released report card data. It was also in our class 1 notice and in our, if you remember, we talked about the educational options. It's required to be presented in the educational options. And so until we have a new report card, which will probably not be until, at least at the earliest November of next year, that information will remain there from 2018-19. But
I feel
You're
like I
going
should go on the
to tell our
record
data story.
saying that I anticipate, I mean, it's almost, it's not intentionally punishing us, but I feel like we're like, it's gonna, just the way this is set up, it puts us automatically at a disadvantage. So, it just seems,
We're not alone.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I see what you're doing, Steve. So, okay.
Well, thank you for that.
This first page would be like the summary one-pager that is typical, and then you click into the details?
Yes. So this would be the first page that you see, just, yep, and that summary information. The first 4 pages are generally the short report,
Okay.
and then the rest is in the longer, more detailed report. So you have the option to choose either when you're looking at it from the state. And but that first glance would be that first page. Summer school programming. Erin is working with Linda and our principals on the summer school programming. We have shared the dates. Those have been sent out to families. We will have a slight change in our start times. And Erin, do you want to talk about the change in start times and the locations?
So,
Sorry, have you met, do you know Erin Faust?
Just
Just the intro.
just the introduction.
Yeah, this morning.
Yep. So this year I've been working as the K-5 coordinator for the WDDA. I've also been working with Laura now on summer school and just updating and going through all the things for summer school. Last year and the year before I served as the middle school principal for summer school. So I have that experience as well. So we are changing the location of summer school this year. Our K-3, so pre-K through 3, the K-4s to 3rd grade will be at Silverbrook, and then the 4th through 7th grade will be at Badger. And then we are also shifting the start date, times a little bit, because there was, with both schools starting at the same time, the busing became an issue and then the supervision of unstructured time became an issue. So we are having the elementary students start 10 to 15 minutes earlier than the students at Badger, simply so that we can get all the students dropped off at Silverbrook, get the buses over to Badger, and we don't have all of this unsupervised, unstructured time. It was supervised, but unstructured. And that doesn't bode well for students to have lots of unstructured time.
With the number of students who typically take advantage of summer school, we felt that Silverbrook was going to be a better location this summer, given that we're needing to make the decision now at this time, and we don't know what the situation will be. There's more students engaged in summer school than attend Green Tree on a daily basis.
No, I think that's a great move. Plus, you have more space, so, you know, depending on where we're at pandemic-wise, you know, more social distancing opportunities. Plus, it's kind of a neat way to get kids, you know, they get to peek behind, you know, where they're gonna be going in the future, and
And statistically, if you visit your next campus 10 times over the course of your life, it's an easier transition for you, so
yeah. So
one visit done.
I think I kind of mentioned that to you on our call, that I was like, oh, those third graders might be kind of excited of them being there in a couple of years.
yeah, I agree. I think that's.
And same thing with Badger then too, so,
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah, very smart.
We will be offering our standards classes virtually, so reading and math, you could elect to take it virtually or in person.
Okay.
And so that we'll have that option. With our enrichment classes at the elementary and middle school, intermediate and middle school level, those will be in person. So, students will come into the building for those. High schools, again, is an additional week for our 5-week classes. A class that student is wanting to earn credit for will be over those 5 weeks. They will have opportunities to do credit recovery or remediation in order to make up, finish something that was not finished during the year, and that may be a little lesser time. Transportation, again, busing will still be offered. We are looking at the drop-off and pick-up locations, especially with the shift from Green Tree being not offering the school at Green Tree, but offering it at Silverbrook. And so Nancy Defenbaum continues to be involved heavily with that, obviously. And then registration will come up in March, so we will be bringing the summer school program, the program itself, for approval to the full board. We are hoping to offer some coding classes. Erin, you want to talk a little bit about those? They could see some of your comments in the draft.
Okay. Yep. So we're looking to add some computer programming courses, like introduction to that, for our elementary students, just to start building some background in computer science. So the course hasn't been built yet. Whoever we determine is going to teach it, I will work with them to develop the curriculum for that program. But there are a lot of free resources, and there are resources within our district that I can work with Tim to utilize. We have some STEM classes that we already offer, but this would be more focused on the actual programming and writing the code versus, building things and that side of it. So I think there's a need for it, and I think there's an interest with our students, and there's a lot of ways to make it really fun and get that logical thinking going for our students. And I know Tim is working also on updating the scope and sequence for K-12 of our computer science curriculum. So I feel like this would just be either a good introduction or a good foundation for a lot of our students.
Any questions about summer school?
How was summer school last year? What numbers wise compared to 2019? Because I know, we've had such a successful summer school program over the years, and that was going into, we just come off of the pandemic, and I know it was virtual. What do you anticipate for this year? I feel like it's like another brand new situation. Yeah. How do you even plan for what kind of response you're going to get?
Yeah, so I anticipate there will be a lot of our parents will want the in-person for their students. We will have some that really want the virtual as well. And, but I expect that number to be smaller. And so comparing last summer to the summer before, lower numbers. We also reduced our staff for summer school because of the shift to virtual and reduced our overall offerings then. There were things that just were not held. And the easiest visual is to look at the book from last year to see what was canceled.
Right, right. No, I'm just glad that you're anticipating that most people are gonna wanna be in person.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be a 6-to-1, what people want in person to virtual.
Probably kind of similar to what this school year is. Okay, good. I just don't want it to be, like last summer, and, because I don't think it will be. Okay.
I think some of our high school students will appreciate the flexibility of doing a virtual summer school, because it'll work with their work schedule or whatever.
Yeah.
But the in-person at the high school will happen as well, which we were virtual last year.
Yeah, I feel like high school, summer school is, for kids, has kind of a different purpose than the elementary and middle school grades. So, yeah, I'm glad that you look at them so differently.
Do you think are you anticipating numbers being more in line with pre-COVID?
I am.
Okay. I almost wonder if it won't even be higher, because people are just like
Ready?
itching to like,
Or catching up from things that they,
Right.
weren't able, the consequences of last spring
Mhm.
for different students, so.
yeah, I really think between the two of those things.
We'll be working with Amy Breaker, the school nurse, on what protocols will be in place in summer school. At this point, though, I would say, we have no reason to change them.
Right.
Sure.
Right, yeah.
You'll be proud, I had this week board members from another district where they're not in school, and they're kind of looking at the decision and calling and saying, we're looking to you, and what have you done, and how's it been successful? Because, we really have been successful with all of our mitigation efforts and keeping open. So it was nice to have others looking to us for, what are you doing, how are you doing it? We want to
No,
copy
for
that.
sure, I think it's definitely a breaking point.
Yeah,
when you look
and we're happy to
at-
share. That's the only reason we are where we are as well, is that collaboration. Laura works with networks around what is summer school gonna look like this year for everyone, and, across districts, to just garner those very same ideas, like what can we pull off for kids?
Do we, can you choice in to our summer school program? Could that be, if there are, surrounding?
So I'd have to look at ours, but yeah, you can be an out-of-district student and come in. There's different costs you generally associated with
Sure.
doing that.
Okay,
A student who comes to live here for the summer with grandma or grandpa or whatever, maybe summer home is here, they're able to participate as well. And our pro-field students are able to participate in summer school with the district.
It's a good point, that do we have non-district enrollment for our summer program?
Yes.
Okay.
And how do
And what is the cost for that? Do we have that?
So if they're staying here, there's no cost.
Right.
And so,
But
I'm
we
sorry,
would be-
that's what I
but-
took. And
Yeah,
then
but we're open for
parochial
all three
students,
levels.
There's no cost.
Right.
As long as you're residing in
Right.
here, even if you're residing here for the summer. I don't know, I'd have to double check the cost for non-district attendees. It's been more when their system, so.
They're usually here in some capacity
Yes,
already.
right,
but-
because their district is not,
Yeah.
does not offer.
There are
Unless they
avenues
need-
for resident and non-resident enrollment in summer programs.
And
Space
if-
dependent, of course,
how do we market that to?
everywhere.
Right.
We have not. So just, our website is not yet updated. Our summer school information is always on the website. So Students who are open enrolled can take advantage of it, and parents are getting that information. The people who have come in from outside, so that, like those who are living here for the summer, they know they're coming and that's how they vote. But we have not extensively marketed our summer school program. I think making an announcement that we're doing virtual and in person might be a great advantage for us.
And, showing our success at being open thus far for the regular school year with so many more kids in the school, and then all of our
I
great
think the
offerings
understanding
at
too,
summer school.
yeah, I think the understanding, I had read some things in the paper recently around the understanding of what summer school is and how it's a blend of kind of on-target instruction, remediation, or enrichment opportunities. And then there's different costs associated, and we receive funding for summer school. So, being clear that we're not adding something on without having fiscal support to provide that for kids as well. And as you said, getting creative with opening up pathways
Well,
for everyone.
summer school's been a revenue positive.
Exactly. I think there's some misunderstanding about that. Like I said, I just had read that in the paper, some people questioning some choices, and it's like, well, this, as you noted, is revenue positive. It's a program that we receive aid for, and it not only, kind of not just remediation, like I said, it's something to be proud of. And it's a service to our families and communities. If I can have your kids for 4 hours a day, I'm helping our community members with providing really amazing opportunities for kids at low cost. Instead of going to a camp that's hundreds of dollars, like we can provide amazing experiences here for kids at a much different scale and rate.
That is all we had on our agenda for today. Are there any other questions, comments?
I don't have anything.
Nancy, anything?
The only thing I wanted to say, I didn't say it before when you were talking about the health curriculum or the review of it. I just would want to caution, and I'm sure Laura's aware, but, I don't have a problem with the public being involved, but I cannot stand it when a few members of the public try and hijack an entire session or think that they know more than the people that we actually pay as our professionals to come up with curriculum and to make decisions for our students. So I just want to be really mindful of the fact on how we structure those public sessions so that we are not allowing, one or potentially two public members to hijack an entire session and make it impossible for other people to voice their opinions and concerns.
Thank you, Nancy, I appreciate that. We are looking more at like a fishbowl environment for that participation.
Yeah, I think that's good. I just think someone needs to be, sadly, we've seen this happen before, right? So someone needs to be the heavy, I guess, lack of a better word, to be able to let someone know when they're out of line or perhaps their time is up and they cannot continue to, I guess, hijack the whole session. So I appreciate that you're on that, and I just, want to reiterate that from my perspective as a school board member, that's not what those sessions are for. Those sessions are for multiple people to be able to voice concerns or ask questions, not one or two people, basically monopolize the time and not allow for others.
Thank you, Nancy.
And also that health is about a broad,
I'll say it more candidly, right, everyone assumes it's around
Yeah.
some type of sex education,
Yeah,
and it's
it's
not.
not.
It's around health, hygiene, growing, all, there, like you said, it's much more
Dealing with
encompassing.
stress.
And people are generally more surprised that, it's understanding safe touch, not safe touch when you're a little kid. It's all of these different things. Understanding, when you hit the certain age, like, you gotta take a shower every day and it's time to put on deodorant. It's things of that nature as well. So I think people make an assumption, but it's a good point. It is so much broader.
So when you're in the public
that.
presentation, lead with that scope of what health education is, so that you're setting the tone for what is,
Yeah.
what you're talking about here. Otherwise, people make assumptions, and unfortunately, it's almost like you said, it's like code. Health class is code for sex ed,
Right.
which is not. And
No, it's not.
And you could spend a lot of time on one topic when health is such a broad area.
Absolutely. Good. I think this has been very productive today.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, well, if nothing else, we will adjourn. 9:24.